we so first of all, I'm super happy to be back with all of you chatting about books that have made it to the big screen or little screen, right? So my choice was the book called Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. It is also available on Apple TV as episodes as well. So it was on the little screen. So Bonnie Garmus, it's her debut novel. And it tells a story about Elizabeth Zott. So it's set in the 1960s in Southern California. It's a romantic comedy. But what's interesting is it has a lot of undertones, actually not even undertones, overtones of feminism and challenging the status quo, which is really interesting. And so, yeah, it's a great book. So I'm happy that we can dive in and chat about it. So what did you guys think?
So I read the book before our season.
Okay.
And loved it. And then on our season 3 finale, I was like, I already know it's going to be my favorite. It's an amazing book. And have her that as her debut book, like,
oh, right. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really like the book. And I agree, it's an overtone of feminism in it. Like, I just really like Elizabeth Zott's character so much. Like,
what do you like about it?
The people from Suburb 6, they feel inspired by her. I feel inspired by her too. Like, she just constantly does what it's hard to do. It's hard to say, no, that's not true. Like, because I've worked in industries where it's male dominated, and I play the game and pretend I'm not offended when somebody asks me to get coffee, or that I'm like the eye candy for the booth. Like, I don't, right? Like, that's embarrassing, but I'm just like, oh, ha, ha, ha. But she doesn't do that. Like, I found her very inspiring, because she's like, and occasionally to certain men I worked with that I thought could hear it, I would say things like, yeah, don't do that. And they're like, they'll say something like, oh, I'm going to hell, aren't I? Ha, 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 ha. I'm like, yeah, I'm really trying to prevent you from doing that. Like, so sometimes in my life, I would say that to certain men, but in a room full of men, I wouldn't. And I found that inspiring, that she just always was, she wasn't being pushed into the box she was forced into, because she just was like, that's not right. And I refused to go into it. Even though
she was so true to herself.
Yeah.
Yes. So true to herself. Yeah. Yeah. I really like that.
Yeah.
That she
even if it wasn't easy for her. Yeah. Right. Because oftentimes it wasn't easy for her. Right.
Extra hard in the 60s.
100%. Yes. Right. And it was interesting how even Mrs. Frask, that she also, I heard one time it being described as the crab mentality, where women also try to pull other women down. And so I was thinking of her, and about this crab mentality. And it's interesting how even she was like, you couldn't raise a woman up back then, she was like saying that she was just, Elizabeth was riding on Calvin's coattails. So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
Well, and everyone just assumed it. Like, no one even considered that she might not be sleeping with him, or she might actually be a gifted chemist herself, or any of it, because she was a woman. So automatically she couldn't be A, B, C, D, E. So you must be doing F.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What do you think, Kim, of it?
Well, I didn't know that it was that writer's first book. So that makes it even that much better, because I love the story anyway, for everything that Sarah said and what you've already mentioned. But I also really love the way the story's told. I love a story that unfolds and, starts somewhere else and then goes back in time for a minute. And just the storytelling itself, the story itself is great, but the way the story was told was also a huge kind of positive for me in that experience. And yeah, Elizabeth Zott's character is awesome. I love exactly what Sarah was saying. She's so true to herself. And I just love how it's so simple for her, right? It's like math. Nope, I'm also a human. And as humans, we are the same. you know, like we are equal. And so and I love how like confused and like incredulous she is when people are like, well, you can't possibly. And she's like, why can't I possibly? I have 2 legs and 3, I was gonna say 3 arms. I have 2 legs and 3 arms. Of course I can juggle.
Different book.
But you know what I mean? Like she'd like say some biological fact, right? Like, well, I take as much oxygen as the human lung, so of course I can do that, you know, like whatever. And I like just how simplified it was, because it gets complicated and confusing. And she's just like, 1 + 1 = 2. Like, what are you doing?
And I love too that Calvin had the exact same mindset towards that as well.
Yes.
And I feel like that was their catalyst or their TSN turning moment in their relationship, you know, when he apologized for thinking she was a secretary, you know, not for throwing up on her, you know, but saying like this. So I think that I would imagine from her point of view, that's like the most lovely thing you could possibly say to her, you know, that would make her see him in a different light. But I love that Calvin also was sharing the exact same sentiments about why would you say you're facing discrimination, you know, gender discrimination. You're a human, you have, you know, you're a chemist. And I thought it was really, I thought it was good for him to also be saying that as well. And also like a big eye opener that you couldn't imagine unless you go through it, right? Like the discrimination, being held back, less opportunities, not being able to meet your full potential, you know, at that time because you are a woman, you know. So I thought that was interesting too.
I think that also it was a relief that Calvin didn't need to be convinced of the discrimination or the feminist point of view, but he was originally a little bit blind to it by virtue of being a male. Like that's not something he's spending his time really considering. But when she told him about it, he was like, oh, and like, again, oh yes, you're right. That adds up. I'm with you. Like it wasn't just like, are you sure? Maybe you're being sensitive, all of that shit, right? So
and I feel like in the episodes on Apple, they did a better job of exemplifying that. You know, that Calvin really understood it. Like they had, do you remember in that episode, Calvin wanted her to be in first position for the study they were doing, and they said no, right? So he got firsthand, he could see it firsthand. So I thought they did a better job in that, or an even better job in the episodes on that as well. So sort of highlighting that too.
I didn't like, now that you're talking about the episodes, I didn't like them as much as the book.
Me neither.
And
I just think I thought,
yeah, I thought that it was interesting because I was sure, like, I was like, yes, like I love this book and now I can't wait to watch this show. I think it's because of whatever, I can't point out like specifically, but the like minute changes, because there were changes between the book and the episodes in the way that the story was told. Like there was nothing wrong with the originals. Like it was very excellent, in fact. And just the tweaks here and this, that, and being a little bit different. I understand, I guess, like, for example, with the assault by the professor when she was going for her master's. Like I can understand how it would be a challenge to try to lay that out the way the book laid it up. You have a mini series, limited edition, you know, these limited series, you can actually do it. So just do it, right? Make that one episode that's only her at college, and we'll all realize like, oh shit, I didn't finish it. The Apple TV ones, I didn't care to go back to them. No, I didn't even care. I'm like, I consumed it and I loved it, and now I don't really need to consume it again because it's not right, you know, like it's not what I loved. It's just ever so different, but
the end was different too. I want to talk about that then, since you didn't watch the end. I'll say, so the book, the end, I cried because his mom and her are hugging because they both had the same kind of horrible discrimination their entire lives that ruined their lives, right? And they're holding each other and crying over Calvin and their lives and everything that happened to them. And it was a really moving part of the book. And in the movie, they made it like she was contemplating if she's going to be part of her family. Do you know what I mean? Like, or if she's going to let her help her with funding and stuff. Like she was just, it was like, I'm going to think a bit over. It wasn't as like, now we're immediately a family. Do you know what I mean? Which the book was. Yeah, because you've got this shared experience. It was like, I'm inviting you to dinner. You're on the family tree. We're all together. This is our family now. Like instantly, you're accepted. I understand what happened to you. Do you know what I mean? Whereas,
yeah, like let's move forward together.
And in the series, it didn't seem like that. It seemed very more cold. Like, I didn't find Elizabeth Zott in the book cold. She just was righteous or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, she was like, this is right, this is wrong, here are the facts. But she was a caring person. It's like when she talked about when Harriet got abused, and she immediately went on her show and did a thing about poison mushrooms and talked about basically abuse.
Right? Like that's,
Being
I
like,
remember now in the show that I don't want, like, I was actually torn because there's probably a narrative around like, oh, once again, showing a family of color with dysfunction in it. Like, I bet you there's a line of, I want to say questioning, but that's not right, where people would be like, that's not cool. Like, why isn't the white family, like, whatever, right? Because that's like a low key version of racism. Like, look at every time we show a black person, they're doing something negative or experiencing something negative. They're not successful. So I did appreciate that the Apple version didn't venture into Harriet being an abused wife or the husband being like whatever, like that's fine, but still it was part of the story, and I just wanted the story to stay the same the way that I read it. That's a hard one though, because I can see the other side where it's like, no, we're going to stay away from portraying people of color in this way.
Definitely. I preferred the way they did portray them, but right, that they took out that narrative, which...
And then it changed, like, because a lot of things were kind of attached to that. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know.
Yeah. Some of the reviews I was reading was saying just that. They were speaking more about the feminist narrative that, oh, here we go again, that it's men who are, you know, terrible to women. So that was the
legit
angle.
In the 60s. That was actually true. Like, we're talking about the 60s here.
Yes.
Like,
right. Yeah. I know. I don't understand this total blind ignorance, but that was some of the comments to her. So not necessarily the racist part of it, but more of like the feminist part of it. So I found the same thing about the episodes. I feel like some of the sentiments were the same, but they changed it too much. And I really would imagine that Bonnie Garmus wouldn't be really happy about that ending, because it's almost like a culmination.
yes,
right?
exactly.
Like, of the women going through this really, constant shittiness in their lives because of their women in the 60s. All throughout really every generation, but still, let's just say the 60s.
Yes, okay. Yeah. Okay.
And then it's this wonderful culmination that they understand each other and that they have each other for support this like womanhood. So it's really, I'd imagine Bonnie, if she ever came on, would not it's
an important theme that got altered, right? And it's like, this is the main theme, and that's one of the main ways that she drove it home in the beautiful putting the puzzle together way, and they changed it.
Yeah.
Probably because there's a male executive deciding how we're doing it.
Right. It's true.
Book interrupted. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Interrupting cow. Moo! Book interrupted.
And you know what I found interesting in the episodes as well? They focused more on the cooking than they did the book.
Not even the good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was really interesting too. Yeah.
They sped into it too. Like,
yes, right. Yeah, right.
And they missed pieces that were key again to the feminism and the whatever, like the arguing about the set, and then like getting like it just wasn't the whole thing wasn't translated well, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I wonder who directed
the Apple show. I'll giggle it.
There you go. Yeah, I wonder if that would be it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that too. Like the point was that she was inspiring people, women,
yes,
and the rest of the world, being like, you deserve to be taken seriously.
Yes. Yes.
We all do. Like, yeah.
And that's an important job, and bringing science into cooking. And I loved how it was in the book, that viewpoint of equality was from the get-go. I loved it. About her last name, about marriage, I wasn't 100% sure. I think they should have gone into that a little bit more, but last names, and even she talked about how, because this happened to me, so I'll ask you guys if it's ever happened to you as well, but where a woman goes by the first and last name. So my name is Mrs. John Smith.
Yeah.
And so she talked about that, right? And I actually had that experience one time. That was a million years ago. And it was one of my first jobs. And I was filling out applications for people for like this furniture company. And it was, like one of those don't pay for 2 years. So I had to get people's financials. And so I asked this woman for her name. She's like, Mrs. John Smith. I'm like, no, your name. And she's like, Mrs. John Smith. I'm like, no, like I need
your name
not
is
your
John.
husband's name, your name, right? And so, I mean, I was young and I wasn't going to push the issue, but I remember at that time thinking, this is so freaking weird. Like, you've lost your whole identity. Like your entire identity is gone because you got married. Like, it was so whack to me when I was 17. Yeah. But.
So all of so there are 5 directors. Each person did 2 episodes each. They're all women.
Oh,
interesting.
Like that. Yeah, okay, Apple TV. That's great.
Well, you like in this day and age, you better know.
No, I know, but it's not necessarily true.
I want to know who, is it a screenplay for TV? What's it called? I want to know.
Yeah. Who wrote the screenplay?
Yeah.
I thought the casting for Elizabeth was good. Like,
same, I like her.
I liked her a lot, and I think she did a good job. Portraying Elizabeth. I didn't like the series as much as the book, because the book, it just had so much to it.
Yeah.
There's just so many layers of the mother talking about how, because she was an unwed mother and she wouldn't sign the papers for her son to be put up to adoption, that they just let her be in labor at 17 by herself.
Yeah, in the room,
like stuff
right?
like that. And then said she died so she could, and that Calvin died so she could adopt him out, like things like that. Or the photographer like totally missing the point when he went to the funeral, or originally the Life magazine guy, although he switched after realizing she opened up and said everything, but originally being like, I don't get this, like I don't get her, like let's talk about your hair, let's talk about your dress. And she's like, did you watch the show?
Yeah. Yeah, just missed your point altogether.
Like there's so much in the book that makes, like there's so much depth and information. And then the priest like lying because he wanted money, because he wanted to get out of the orphanage. Like he didn't want to do, like there's just so much in the book that they left out in the series that made it less amazing.
The screenwriter is Lee Eisenberg. That is a gentleman.
Oh,
gotcha. So some of the criticism as well is that of the book was that it was too basic. So
basic.
I know. Did you? So I take it you don't agree. I didn't agree.
Think that it was basic at all. I thought it was pretty like the thing that I admire about this author is the way she told that story. And I think the way she told that story, like she had to hold a bunch of ideas in her head at the same time and tell it like say, this is going to be probably more confusing, but I'm trying to simplify it. Say this story has 10 parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And she had to tell it 4, 3, 1, 5, 9, 7, 2, 8, 10. And you're like, cool. Like the way everything came together with little blips of information. But I liked in the book how that priest plays a part and he's part of the history. Like the book was perfectly fine. Like there was, it was really, really good. And it wasn't basic at all.
Oh,
not at all.
Like I loved like the subtle things. Like she had that pencil behind her ear, probably because she's going to stab whoever else is coming to her. Like I loved that.
So
and I love that she's like, I wish I had more pencils. Like,
yes,
so great.
Best line.
Yes, totally. And you know what? So when we did the promo pics for this, I did. I hadn't read the book or seen the series, so I Googled it to get a sense of it. So I did my hair in victory curl. I didn't put the pencil in.
Oh.
So like after I read the book, I'm like, oh my gosh,
You should have been like holding a pencil, you know, like.
I know. So now I wish I'd read the book before I did those promo pics, because I just missed like one of the biggest parts of that book was this.
You could have
pencil.
literally dressed up as a pencil.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Could have changed
my
everything.
next Halloween costume.
Yeah.
I'll be like, you're a pencil. I'm like, no, I'm Elizabeth Zott.
So funny.
But it was nice. I love it. Yeah, I mean, the pencil was so great, right? Because even like the whole commentary about not a pen but a pencil, because you could erase, everyone makes mistakes and you can erase it. So I was really kicking myself afterwards for, in those victory curls, not having a pencil. But anyway.
Yeah, like that was huge to me, because they kind of pointed it out and someone mentioned it, and then later on you realize, you're like, oh, like that's like that's like the bear in the woods. Do you know what I mean? Like she carries a pencil.
Yeah.
Like,
yes. How about when she pulled out that knife for the meeting with the producer? Is it producer? No, he's station manager or something.
Yeah, the dink.
Yeah.
And then he had a heart attack.
The jerk.
Yeah.
And then he had a heart attack, and she was so calm and he couldn't figure it out. Like in the book, it was so much better than the series, because in the book, you're reading him being like, why the hell is she not doing what she's supposed to be doing? Like crying and begging for a job and what the hell? And then he gets close and she just pulls out her knife, and he's like, and she waited till like she was just about to be assaulted. I just loved her so much. Like you're just like, yes.
And then outsmarted him, right? Before she calls 911, gets him to agree to, all the contract stuff, like just outsmarted him. Oh, that was really great too.
So great.
I know, it's good, right?
It's a really good book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I highly, highly recommend it.
Me too.
There's just so much in that book. Do you see?
There's
like so many layers of interesting,
and Calvin's history too.
Right.
Yes.
And the rowing. Like there's
like
so
they didn't do
much.
anything about the rowing. She's just all of a sudden pregnant, kicking ass on an erg. But like there's no like, examples of sexism while he tries to bring her to the thing, and then like, and knowing that she can't swim. Like, was that a part in the show?
Yes, in the show but he discovered it differently. Like
he had to like rescue her, didn't he?
Yeah, in the book he found out much later, and then he didn't have to teach her to swim. That didn't happen. In the movie, he found it right away and then taught her how to swim. Yeah. It was like a romantic moment. That didn't happen in the book.
I didn't love that in the show at all. Yeah.
And I don't know that they really captured like the closeness of the relationship between the producer and her. Which I loved. And the reason why I liked that Harriet had a dissatisfied marriage is because she ends up with that producer.
Yeah.
I know.
I like that.
Me too.
Yeah. Happy endings. That's why.
Yeah. I like that part in the book better too, with Harriet. How she was like there, because also another mother figure, right? To come in and help her.
And she was strong too in her own way, right? Because she was like trapped in, what is probably a fairly common example of relationships at that time, and still doing what she has to do, or like living her life, finding a way to go on, even though her reality is a nightmare.
Yeah. And I love how she fought her own biases, because she kept seeing strange men coming in and out of the house. Remember how Elizabeth was helping the other guys at Hastings, right? And so she checked her own bias and came over, because she's like, I remember what it's like to have a newborn, came over and then saw what was really happening. So I thought that was really nice. Yeah.
I also like that she's like, I'll get up at 4 a.m. Do you know what I mean? Like all of it made sense, because she's trying to spend as little time as possible with her dumb husband.
Yeah.
And so she's like, yep, I'll come over at 4 so you can go row, and I'll like.
The mushroom episode, the TV. I know, right? It was just so brilliant. Yeah, it was cute.
And how Walter was like, oh shit. Like she's telling everyone at home how to poison their horrible husbands. Like I get it, but like, get it. Yeah. So getting fired.
Yeah. It's funny because she was funny too, right? Without meaning to be funny, because she's a very serious person. So even remember the soup cans? She's like,
yes.
Yeah, I'll tell everybody about this. Sure, no problem. Well, you'll save time because you'll kill your family off and you won't have to make them food. Oh, that was pretty cute. And again, holding true to herself. So not even thinking about, well, I should just check.
I could lose my job or any of it.
Right.
That's another thing that the series sucked at. That when she promoted the spam, like she gave into something, she would never give into anything. And in the show, they made her be like, "I'll promote this," or was it spam?
Because I have to.
Spam. It was like, oh, it was it's not lard.
Lard, yeah, something like
lard.
that.
It's Crisco. She was like promoting that.
Oh,
and
she never would have done that.
She would have never
done that.
Yeah, she was influenced by that she might lose her job or whatever, right?
Those are things.
Did a screenwriter never read the book, do you think? Like, why would you alter something that's so deeply important and ingrained in a character? Why would you alter that?
I don't think he got it. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he didn't actually understand the character, and he didn't actually understand those themes that were all impacted by the small different changes that were made to the screenplay. Like, it could have been 2 seasons.
Yeah.
You know, it could have ended with Calvin dying, and then the next season could have been the whole cooking at 6 or whatever.
It's a great idea.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think you should redo it, because I think
should be the screenwriter. Well, me and Sarah, what were we talking about? We rewrote Killers of the Flower Moon.
We
way
did.
Better. In theory. I mean, we just talked about it. It's not actually pen to paper or anything, but
someone make him knock at your door to take you up on that.
I don't know. I don't know how great it would be if all we ever did is rewrite things that have already been written. I don't know who would buy those scripts, but we could.
That could be a whole new thing.
Ooh.
Like, we could have like a little
who did it better,
because there's other people that probably feel like us, right? Like, just like there's probably people out there who obviously liked it enough to produce it. I bet you there's people out there that are more diehard to the but the story. Okay, for Flower Moon, the storytelling was absolutely lacking,
for sure.
Right? We could have. There's so many options for telling a good story with that story. For this one, it's like you didn't even need to change anything.
No,
the
I felt
author
the same
did
way.
it perfectly fine.
Yeah. Why bother, right? I think that would make it a good gig. Like the final episode of Game of Thrones. Lots of people would love to see that redone. So that could be a new gig. Is redoing bad.
Great.
That would be actually. I think that like I really do
it better.
think yes,
done better.
Yeah. That's the title of it. I'd tune in.
Scripts done better.
Yeah.
Totally. And we could have a whole thing where it's like, you need to watch episodes 1 to 4 because we didn't fuck with those. But then it started to go sideways. So here's how. But then we'd have to get all the actors back. Could you imagine? What would be better is if we did it ourselves.
You're sewing the costumes.
It's really low budget.
At night.
And I'm playing Calvin and Sarah's playing 6:30.
Well, you know what? I would get that pencil right this time.
Yeah, yeah, you could definitely be. You could be Zott.
You could have pencil. You could be Zott.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's one thing that would make it in. But I wonder if that. I mean, I don't wonder. I'm quite sure that that's why the episodes weren't as successful as perhaps they could have been. Right? Too much was changed, and it was.
They missed the essence of that.
Yeah.
Movement.
Yeah.
It's like super feminist being like, take us seriously.
Yes.
And he didn't get that.
Yeah.
Like,
and how nonsensical it is to not be taken seriously as a woman. Like, it's just, we have all the same DNA. Like, why? You know, it's just nonsense. So,
and Elizabeth Zott really portrayed the character, how nonsensical it is. That's exactly what I loved about her, because the way she reacted to when people did that, it was like, what nonsense are you saying to me right now? I need to get back to my serious business. That's exactly the same as your serious business, because we're the same.
And it makes me think the screenwriter actually, really didn't get her character, because even having Calvin teach her how to swim, it's like, oh, she needs the man to teach her how to swim.
She would have learned by herself.
Yeah.
Right. They just were like, let's not flip the boat and we'll be fine. Like, it was like, don't worry, we just won't flip the boat. And then she ended up joining the 6, like, instead of just the 2 of them.
That's
stupid. I need you to help me. Let's have
it's a version of rescuing.
Yeah, it's just another rescue. She didn't need rescuing from anyone ever.
No, and she pushed against it too, right?
Yes.
She never would have. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's too bad. That's a real miss. It's a real miss.
Yes.
Yes. But I liked it.
We rate it again. You'll see.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
Never forget, every child matters.